The start of a decade is usually an exciting time filled with new goals, dreams, or if you're 2020, a new pandemic. And with each passing of 120 months, we are reminded of our previous experiences and the ones around us who could make it possible. If you're anything like me, each decade has also been riddled with playing hundreds of hours of video games, and the year 2010 was no exception. During this time, I was in middle school, and on weekends and summertime, I played a lot of video games on my Xbox 360. And it was a great year for releases, as studios and publishers were producing their best products to date, breaking previously held records. Bungie and Microsoft would release Halo Reach and go on to sell over 3 million copies in its first month. Rockstar and its little brother, Rockstar San Diego, would go on to develop Red Dead Redemption and quickly sell over 5 million copies in the first 3 weeks. And of course, Treyarch and Activision would develop and release Call of Duty Black Ops, which sold a whopping 5.6 million copies in 24 hours, shattering that of Modern Warfare 2 and establishing a new record for largest entertainment launch. The video games that came out in 2010 had a significant impact on the gaming industry and the gamers themselves. They demonstrated the potential of video games as a medium for multiplayer gaming, user-generated content, and interactive storytelling. These games set new standards and pushed the industry forward, and their influence can still be felt in many of the games that are released today. As consumers, the options were bountiful, but the time to play was limited. With only a finite amount of time at our disposal, we were expected at a young age to be able to divide our attention into multiple different stories and franchises. This led to some games being played less, or even not at all. And even worse were games that were amazing, but flew right under the radar. This leads me to what I consider to be the most underrated title from this year in gaming. High Moon Studios, who is owned by Activision, was given the task to create a new game with the Transformers IP. This would be their first time given the reins of a large intellectual property with a deep and rich history spanning decades prior. At this point in time, we only had games based off the Michael Bay movies, and they were less than favorable in the eyes of critics and fans alike. So High Moon definitely needed to make a change. What they were able to produce was nothing short of unique. They spent years studying the Transformers cartoons and reading the comics, and it is seen in the art style in the game as it pays homage to the G1 designs with a modern flair. They also made every attempt to perfect the gameplay of this third-person shooter, making each action and movement feel smooth in the player's hands, all while transforming it into their own unique twist. Pun intended. With what can clearly be seen as a love for the Transformers world, High Moon was also keen on having voiceover work from professional actors like Fred Tatasciore as Megatron.
Glorious new age is upon us, my brethren. With dark energon infused into the core, Cybertron is mine to command!
Nolan North as Brawl.
Lord Megatron, stabilizers are failing!
Sam Riegel as Starscream.
Teach me, Megatron. Teach me to wield dark energon the way you do, and I will serve you.
And the ever so famous Peter Cullen as Optimus Prime.
I am Optimus.
To put the cherry on top, they even went so far as to create custom sound effects specifically for this new title. Clearly, they took this role very seriously. Since release, Transformers War for Cybertron sold 219,000 copies in the United States. This obviously dwarfs in comparison to the titles mentioned earlier, but was still a very successful run for the studio and developers. Enough for them to eventually start development on a second title, which is for another video. War for Cybertron had what I would call a unique campaign setup. Although linear at its core, it was split into both factions, Decepticons and Autobots, each with 5 chapters to complete. Chronologically, the story starts with the Decepticons, with the Autobots following right after. The story could be considered a prequel to the movies or any other Transformers media, as it took place on the Transformers' home planet of Cybertron long before their contact with the humans on Earth. As we jump in, we are met with the Transformers in an all-out civil war, each side fighting their own kind over complete power or the return of peace. In the Decepticon story, you follow Megatron as he tries to find and control the unstable and dangerous Dark Energon. With his newfound power, he begins corrupting the living planet at its core in an attempt to gain full control. On the Autobot side, you are greeted with the news of the death of their leader, Zeta Prime. Optimus has now been made the last Prime by the High Council, and you follow him as he tries to reclaim their capital city of Iacon and get rid of the Dark Energon at Cybertron's core. Each chapter allowed the player to control one of 3 characters and even let you play with up to 2 friends online. The story is well written in my opinion and gives you a glimpse to the events prior to the Transformers' arrival to Earth, something that had yet to be done in any form of media. War for Cybertron was released on Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and PC, and with it came an extensive multiplayer mode. In online gameplay, players could choose from one of 7 different game modes to play, each with its own objectives and gameplay. Of the list was Deathmatch and Team Deathmatch, which are pretty commonplace even today, as the objective is to play solo or as a team and finish the match with the most kills to secure the victory. Conquest is a control point mode similar to Domination in Call of Duty, where players are tasked with controlling and holding 3 different points on a map. Countdown to Extinction is a bomb-style game mode where teams must take an active bomb and place it at the enemy base, very similar to Assault in the Halo series. Power Struggle was the game's version of King of the Hill, where the objective was to hold a randomly selected point for the longest amount of time. Code of Power consisted of teams fighting over a giant melee weapon. In these multiplayer modes, players were able to design their own characters, choosing the colors, vehicle types, and even one of 4 different classes, with each class offering its own set of abilities and weapons. This level of customization is something that today is very uncommon, or is usually hidden behind a paywall like a Battle Pass or Season Pass. For myself and others though, the best mode had to be the Escalation mode. In this game mode, players selected characters from the campaign and would work cooperatively as a team of 4, fighting off waves and waves of oncoming enemies. With the destruction of these entities, they can purchase upgrades, ammo, health, and even unlock sections of the map. It was clearly very similar to the Horde mode found in Gears of War or the Firefight mode in the Halo series, but again it had its own twist and really is just something that most modern day shooters lack. Now of course, no game is perfect, and that goes for War for Cybertron as well. It received okay reviews from critics who complained about level design and how things were too similar. Some could argue that the moody atmosphere that High Moon provided is the reason for this. And aside from that, the multiplayer really never gained a large sum of players, with the peak player count on Xbox hitting 4,600, PlayStation only having around 800, and PC at a pathetic 158. And this was just months after release. This was more than likely due to the game being overshadowed by AAA titles released that year. So although not perfect, it was one of my personal favorite games to this day. A game that I really wish I could still play. I guess from now on I will only be able to reminisce on the title, as getting my hands on a copy is either impossible or way too expensive. And even if I had one hidden somewhere in my home, I would only be able to enjoy a portion of it, as the multiplayer servers were shut down by Activision in 2020, rendering half of the game literally unplayable. Who knows? Maybe someday in the future Activision will give this IP another shot and we'll be blessed with another great title. But until then, we will just have to relive the glory days through YouTube videos like this. Thanks for watching. I hope you found everything informative and entertaining, and if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.